please welcome to the stage Jilliana.
Woo! Oh damn, I'm not quite ready. Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
And non-binary people who don't assign to a gender.
That you are. This one is one of my latest masterpieces, True Life Story. And it's called The Toolman Cumeth, with apologies to Eugene O'Neill. I have to also show you a photograph of me in 1968, when I was slightly slimmer.
Oh, it's lovely.
And that's relevant to the story. In 1968, I could only think of my exotic, exciting journey into the unknown, a continent with a magical, musical language, Brazilian Portuguese. Portuguese with sugar, the Brazilians would say. The sound sent shivers up and down my spine, and the enticing throb of the Afro-Brazilian music, coupled with the bossa nova, almost unknown in London in the late 60s, although de rigueur in Paris, where the poet and singer Vinicius de Moraes had been the Brazilian ambassador. In the late 60s, I was slender, with long, flowing golden locks parted in the middle, and wore short mini dresses showing off my well-endowed, curvaceous body and good legs. I was about 26 and full of energy for a new life on the other side of the world without social connections. In 1968, I was working as a travel agent consultant in Oxford Street for Global Tours, a big tour operating company with offices in New York, Sydney and Johannesburg. I got a perk, an educational tourist week in Lisbon with a colleague, Carol, and off we sped to be educated in Lisbon and Oporto. There I fell in love with the nasal language, easy for me with my knowledge of Spanish and Italian. But when I saw the colonial Baroque, candy pink and pale blue architecture and heard the bossa nova, I was hooked for life. I felt it was my destiny to emigrate to Rio de Janeiro. I rushed down to the Portuguese tourist office with my little Berlitz phrase book and demanded help with the pronunciation. In turn, I was introduced to the charming, friendly tourist office photographer who took me to Hyde Park for a photo shoot. That's the result. In September 1970, I boarded the plane for Brazil, my dream destination, and a new chapter of my life there began. I kept the 4 black and white photographs forever, and in 2019 do not recognize the slender girl lying in the grass, Jilliana. Today, I still have those sexy posed photos in Hyde Park, which ended up on my computer screen, frozen in time. I have been lucky, renting out my high-ceiling Georgian flat for a couple of winter months in January and February. I've always been asked to rent it out by someone with possessions in storage between properties. Thus, my tenant would only come with a few clothes on his or her back. We would usually come to a friendly financial arrangement with a reduced rent in exchange for looking after my lovely black and white cat, Neko. Building work, gardening, and in the case of orange long-haired Zach, IT work. I was computer illiterate in the early noughties, and so every time I had a glitch, as after renting from me, Zach was renting a flat close by, I was forever calling him up for help. He was always at my beck and call and loved to feel wanted. In his mid-30s, Zach never had a girlfriend, worked hard in IT, and I've changed his name, by the way, and must have been very talented, because he was sent to Bangalore to set up one of the Big Five's banking computer systems. He earned enough money to buy his flat for cash. Sometimes his long bushy hair was pink or orange. The poor guy had a degenerate bone condition too, and in general was an unhappy soul, drowning his loneliness in strong cider at the local pub. I always made sure I had some chilled fruit cider in the fridge to offer him. One evening, he came over to convert my TV over to digital, when by chance he saw my computer screen was switched on. Zach gasped when he saw his fantasy woman lying on the grass. He sat quietly, silently, gazing at my image on the screen, announcing, somewhat embarrassed, "Jilliana, I've got a hard-on." Oh well, you better get rid of it. Never had I been in such a situation. Well, he could have jumped on me, who knows? I got up and shouted at him to fix my TV. After all, that's why he'd come over. I discovered he liked to be shouted at and obediently obey his mistress. Being a dominatrix seemed to do the trick. His erection must have gone down with my harsh words. Mr. Fix-It didn't stay long, mumbling he had to meet a friend in the pub, and dolefully left after I had given him a mini gift. An 80s corkscrew called Scruple. Anyone remember those? No, never mind. Probably weren't even born. I told my best friend Pauline the story of the TV toolman and the cockscrew, and we had a girly giggle. Some weeks later, I saw Zach coming towards me in the street on his way to the pub. He'd already apologized for his bad behavior. He smiled and said a nervous hello to us both. "That's the TV guy, isn't it?" Pauline instinctively knew in her wisdom. "Yes, how did you know?" "By the way he lusted after you with his eyes. The toolman cumeth, I subtly replied." That's it, thank you.